Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Radio 5G. This is Michael Henry Dunn with my co-host, Nancy L. Hopkins of Cosmic Reality Radio, here on Wednesday, January 29th. And we have got a lot of interesting 5G news to share with you today, ranging from the wacky and amusing to the truly appalling. And we're going to mix in the hopeful in there somewhere, because that's what we do. We do our best to bring you all the really, we don't want to say scary, we don't want to say terrifying, let's just say urgently important news about the implications of the 5G rollout. And we have got a number of interesting links to share with you right now. So of the stories running out there, Nancy, what are you looking at that you're thinking is our lead story today?
I'd go with the last link with the 10 things that are going to kill us in 5G ways.
Oh yeah, I've already got that up.
Yeah. Let's just do that
right
one.
To the really cheery news. This is from naturalnews.com. Defending Health, Life, and Liberty. And it's a little article by Lance D. Johnson called Technological Terror, 10 Reasons Why 5G Could Cause a Global Catastrophe. They're quoting a lot of information here from Dr. Martin Paul, who has been a guest on our show here. And this is just every time we trot out the hard scientific evidence here. We hope that our listeners can just jot even one or two of these things down. For those moments when you express to friends or associates that 5G is a nightmare, and they roll their eyes at the latest conspiracy theory. Just trot out a little bit of this information. So what I'll do here, Nancy, if this works for you, is just roll through some of this information and we'll comment as we go along. How's that sound?
Yep, that's the way I was seeing it.
Okay, here we go. Fifth generation wireless technology will forever alter human evolution, inundating human cells and subtle energy systems of the human body with constant pulses of radio frequency radiation and electromagnetic fields. 5G is a technological terror and could cause a global catastrophe of human health problems. Here are 10 reasons why 5G must be stopped. And just commenting right away here, he's opening up here with a sentence that sounds like hyperbole, it sounds extreme, but it's a simple fact of DNA. Because of the genetic effects that are described in this article, when it says that 5G will forever alter human evolution. Well, that's just the way genetics works. You start to damage DNA and mess with the strands. That just flows down the generations. And you have shifted human evolution, messed with the gene pool, and as you'll see, this is pretty hard science.
Well, before we start that, just in response to what you just said, last week we had Janice Churchill on, and she went, just think of those electric cars that they want to give us, and now the Teslas are out there. And she told us about the research that's found that children who are sitting in the back seat of electric cars are already sterile. Now that's a change in evolution. You're going to kill them. You're going to make everybody sterile. We're not kidding around here. This is just blatant facts.
Yeah, and it does the old cognitive dissonance thing where the brain just stops working. You go, nah, that can't be true. I can't fit that into my worldview. Tilt, and so people just shift to thinking about what ingredients they want on their pizza, or whether they want a decaf no foam latte or a grande cappuccino. The things that really matter are daily decisions. Anyway, Rolling on here. Disruption of voltage-gated calcium channels in human cells. Again, this is pointed out by Dr. Martin Pall. 5G alters cellular activity by activating the body's voltage-gated calcium channels. So according to electromagnetic frequency scientist Dr. Martin Pall, 5G electromagnetic fields force excess calcium ions to release into cells. This sets off a chain of reactions that increase peroxynitrite. Yeah, peroxynitrite. Yeah, that sounds right. Peroxynitrite formation and free radical activity, damaging DNA and causing, get this, folks, premature aging. So for all of us out there who suffer from vanity, like, well, me, for example, if it doesn't alarm you to think that we're mutating genetic damage down the generations, just think about all those horrible wrinkles and drying skin that you're going to look at in the mirror every morning. Here's another one. Deep EMF penetration and oxidative stress. The studies of Professor Hessig and his colleagues in Switzerland find microwave frequency EMFs to cause oxidative stress deep within the body of animals. Animals that grazed near cell phone towers were born with increased incidence of cataracts. So, I know I'm getting into dark humor here, folks, but if your face is prematurely aging, well, not to worry. 5G will give you cataracts so that you can't see the wrinkles in the mirror in the morning.
Okay. I got to tell you, because we have to, we're in an insane world right now. Bizarro world is somehow where we're living right now. But I have to laugh at that because the other day, last night, I was doing radio and I went into the bathroom with my glasses on. And I came back and I was like, geez, I should never go to the bathroom because there's a mirror in the bathroom and I've got my glasses on. Because if I don't have my glasses on, hey, I look pretty good. So what you just said is like touching home. Yes, that's true. Maybe we have, oh God. Okay, go on.
Yeah. I like it, if I shower first, the mirror is all misty, and I see myself through this sort of, gauzy haze of it. I look, fresh out of college. Yeah.
I like that one. No glasses and make sure the mirror is foggy. And then you won't worry about 5G because you're perfectly all right.
Yeah. And then, if it gets really bad, well, not to worry. Just hang out near a 5G tower. You'll get cataracts and you won't be able to see your wrinkles.
There you go. There you go. Okay.
Yeah. Multi-generational mitochondrial damage. Exposure to millimeter wave frequency EMF radiation, and that is the particular variety of EMF frequency used by 5G, causes damage to the mitochondria of cells and contributes to brain cancer. DNA damage is cross-generational, mutagenic, and can be inherited by offspring. So, just continuing our dark humor stream here. Well, great. If you've got the cataracts, you won't be able to see the wrinkles. Well, not to worry. You'll get brain cancer, and pretty soon you won't care because your brain will be shrinking away. So, yeah, again, just getting back to the seriousness of this, DNA damage is cross-generational, mutagenic, can be inherited. So this gets passed on. And essentially we're talking about destroying the creative matrix of the human race, which is the gene pool. Destroying, let's say, badly damaging. Okay? Moving right along on our merry list here, neuropsychiatric effects. The impacts of EMFs on the brain are subtle at first, but with cumulative, repeated exposure can cause headaches, irritability, sleep disturbances, altered memory, and depression. If you're not depressed enough looking in the mirror, not to worry. Neuropsychiatric side effects of 5G will push that. And so this, again, when we think about kids in school, and life is tough enough being a kid these days. Lord, I'm glad I didn't grow up in this generation. But to have headaches, irritability, sleep disturbances, altered memory, and depression, bothering you as well. And of course, chances are they'll send you to the doctor who will prescribe, some psychoactive drug.
Let me just jump in here again. When we first were going out with the shungite, basically we had the pendants. One little boy, he was like 8 years old, 9 maybe. I think he was 8. And his name is Dylan. And he was given a shungite pendant. And he went to, after school, he gets in the car. His mom said, "How'd your day go?" And, oh my God, it was such a great day, because, and he said to her, "I didn't get any headaches on the computer." And she said she had no idea this child was having problems in school with headaches because of the computer. Because she had never asked and he had never said anything. So people out there, if you're a grandparent or a parent or you just know a kid, ask them. When you're in school, do you get headaches? Just ask them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because if you're not asking the questions, you're not going to get the answers. You're not going to see the reality of it. Your child leaves your home, which is probably dirty electricity and Wi-Fi in it, into an environment that, my God, who was it that we had on? No, it was a tape, and it was about the blood. And this teacher had been they did a blood test before she went into school, and after she goes out of the school, she has another blood test, and her blood was awful. Just awful.
It was lethally toxic.
Yeah.
The things that were happening to her blood, as I recall.
Yep. So, please ask your children so that you know the truth.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, moving on with this list here. Pulsed wave EMFs have proven more dangerous and cause breaks in cellular DNA. Again, this is from Dr. Martin Paul, pointing to 13 separate studies proving why 5G's pulsed wave EMFs are more active and dangerous than the old continuous wave EMFs. Pulsed wave EMFs can cause single-strand and double-strand breaks in cellular DNA while oxidizing cellular bases in cellular DNA. This is one way to cause cancer in the body. Manipulation of the skin through sweat duct antennae. The frequencies that emanate from 5G can affect sweat ducts across the human body, potentially manipulating how the body regulates temperature. Because sweat ducts work like helical antennas, they absorb the electromagnetic energy from 5G radiation between 75 and 100 gigahertz. If the sweat ducts can be manipulated by 5G, then a person's body can be manipulated into stress through this external channel. And of course, 5G can be used and has been used as a weapon, as a crowd control system, which is actually next on the list here. It has the potential to become a directed energy weapons system. 5G hardware uses a dielectric lens and can reportedly be operated in the sub-gigahertz range. Because of this, it will allow, ultimately, autonomous vehicles to communicate with one another. This technology could eventually double as a weapon system because it is similar to long-range radar, phased array radar, and directed energy weapons. In fact, this same technology is already used for crowd dispersal. It has the potential to manipulate crowd movement. Because 5G uses short wavelength frequencies in the millimeter range, it could ultimately be used to hurt and manipulate crowds of people. These same short wavelength frequencies are used by the military's non-lethal active denial systems to disperse crowds. When the waves hit a person, the person feels a burning sensation and will move. So that's scary enough. That has already been used, and so they just dial it down. I mean, all you need to do is dial it up, the intensity, to produce those symptoms. And then we have phased array densification. And this is one of the key things we're always pointing out, folks, which is that, the densification factor, because It's not as if they're taking away 4G and 3G to bring in 5G. It's going to be on top of the other networks. So in order for 5G to work, there will need to be significantly more cell towers, stations, and bases. Cities and residential neighborhoods will become polluted with new sources of radiation, which will send frequencies into homes through brick walls and concrete. This influx of 5G infrastructure will include thousands of new small phased array antennas shooting out radiation in all directions, penetrating homes and human bodies. It kind of reminds me, for those Lord of the Rings fans out there, where Gandalf meets Saruman, and he's warning him about the Dark Lord, and that he's got this eye that can penetrate stone, earth, and flesh. Right? So that basically, 5G, symbolically speaking, is the eye of Sauron in the Dark Tower. That's pretty much what we're talking about here. Re-radiation inside the body. Radio frequency researcher Arthur Furstenberg explains that 5G pulses are shorter and must be delivered in multiple bursts. Now, because of this, the bursts are capable of replicating over and over inside the body. And in 2002, Furstenberg wrote, quote, "When extremely short electromagnetic pulses enter the body, something else happens. The moving charges themselves become little antennas that re-radiate the electromagnetic field and send it deeper into the body." So 5G is promising faster internet speeds, but ushering in this new world of hyperconnectivity comes with multiple risks to human health. Some nations are banning 5G, while others are openly embracing it without any care. And we should add, of course, without honoring the principle of there's a technical term for it, but essentially it's a recognized principle in international law of evaluating potential dangers before implementing
due diligence, basically.
Due diligence, basically, yeah. So that is really, all you have to do is call in that principle. Or when we're talking about, for example, in this last phased array densification, significantly more cell tower stations and bases being brought in. Again, in the good news section, we like to remind everybody of the great success that Roy Broomhall in Australia has had with applying the definition of assault to the rollout of 5G. And there's a very carefully structured series of steps you can take to bring this before for a doctor, for a medical opinion. It's defined as assault within your home, and they succeeded in taking down hundreds and hundreds of these 5G towers in Australia and preventing the construction of thousands more.
Well, so, the largest telecommunications company in Australia has now ceased putting up 5G because of the blowback. And the man who was announcing this was accosted by a reporter saying, "Hey, who are these dumbasses that are, saying this stuff? And, it's just crazy shit." And the guy said, "I don't think it's crazy." So, because of the blowback, some of the people that are actually in control of companies are now beginning to understand it. And that's where we need to be, is that the people on the inside begin to wake up. We might want to look at this link here, Michael. Some nations are banning 5G because it's the story of Brussels, I believe. But
right.
Yeah, let's just give them some good news.
Okay, yeah, and this is from a story that came out August of last year, again by the same gentleman who wrote the current article that we're quoting from, Lance D. Johnson. Again, this is naturalnews.com. Brussels, Belgium, which is the capital of the European Union, halts 5G deployment indefinitely. The 5G project, says authorities, is not compatible with radiation safety standards. So, quoting from the article here, in the next year, preliminary 5G networks are set to roll out in China, the U.S., South Korea, and Japan. In the next 7 years, operators are projected to invest over $1 trillion to expand 5G wireless technology. With 5G, the telecom industry promises instant connectivity, paving the way for, quote, smart cities. 5G is a big tech dream come true, a data collection boon that will tie all internet-connected devices together and increase connectivity speeds up to 1,000 times greater than existing 4G networks. Not that we'll actually notice this. I mean, you click on a YouTube video. This is me talking, not the article. You click on a YouTube video, and the actual difference in this. So the video comes on maybe, 3 to 5 seconds after you click it. And so you will save enough time by exposing yourself, your kids, and the human race to radically lethal technology. You will save, maybe 3.5 or 4 seconds in which you can scratch your nose before watching your YouTube video. I mean, this is really the appeal that they're sending out to us. Oh, it's 1,000 times greater speed. Let's get real, folks. It's about a data collection boom, which is going to be a hugely profitable scheme for the big telecom companies. It's not, what do you want? Do you want to have carcinogenic factors everywhere you go? Or do you want to just work with your current only extremely fast as opposed to mindlessly fast uploads? Moving on here. As investors scramble to get a piece of the 5G pie, the technology is not projected for deployment in every first world country, nor will it be accepted by every big city. So again, this is the good news, folks. Brussels is halting the 5G rollout over severe human health risks. In fact, the minister of the government of the Brussels capital region, Céline Frémont, has vowed to halt 5G deployment. Here's a quote. "The people of Brussels are not guinea pigs whose health I can sell at a profit," states Frémont in an interview with L'Echo. "I cannot welcome such technology if the radiation standards, which must protect the citizen, are not respected, 5G or not. No exceptions will be made in Brussels." Frémont warns that 5G violates Belgian radiation safety standards. She is heeding the warning of over 240 scientists and doctors from over 41 nations who have published research documenting the harmful effects of 5G radiation on all biological life. These scientists have appealed to the United Nations, calling for a moratorium on 5G. The adverse effects of radio frequency and millimeter waves on human and environmental health are well documented. 5G radiation has been shown to cause changes in bacterial growth, neuropsychiatric effects, DNA damage, and even cancer. Permissive countries that sacrifice the health of their population only consider the thermal effects of 5G. And there's much more to 5G radiation than that. So, look, not to worry, folks. 5G is not baking your skin. The thermal effects, the heating effects. So therefore, we'll just ignore the DNA damage, the cellular damage, the carcinogenic effects, the neuropsychiatric effects, because it's not causing your skin to shrivel up from heat. So, of course, there is much more to 5G radiation than that. Moving on with this article from naturalnews.com, scientists warning about the dangers of 5G. And again, they quote our friend Dr. Martin Pall, a Washington State University professor who has called the 5G rollout, quote, "the stupidest idea in the history of the world." And let's just stop and think about the stupid ideas that the world has seen over the last few millennia. The mind boggles when you start to think about that comparison. In his studies, Dr. Paul warns about the very high energy outputs required to ensure efficient penetration of electromagnetic frequency waves. He also documents the extraordinarily high numbers of antennae that are planned, which will increase exposure to the deeply penetrating radiation. Now, I just want to say, if you listened to our interview here on Radio 5G with Dr. Martin Pall, I got to say that was just about one of the most depressing interviews that we've done here, simply because, and it's not like he's this grim Gus guy. He's just rolling out grim information. One of the, in fact, Nancy and I were talking about this just before the show began. Maybe we want to get into this a little bit here.
Well, let's just read through this, but I do want to point out that Dr. Pall was not on our show. We did our recording that he had made with Josh DeSole of the 5G Summit.
Oh, right. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. It was a few months back. Yes.
But it was spooky, scary. But let's go through this, because this is critical information that Dr. Pall presents.
Okay. So he's warning about the extremely high pulsation levels and the high-level interactions of 5G frequency on charged groups, including the voltage sensor charged groups. This rapid influx of pulsed electromagnetic frequency fields has been shown to stress the calcium channels of cells. We covered this actually to some extent in the last article we just quoted from. The two body systems most impacted by pulsed EMFs are the eyes and the kidneys. So preliminary studies, the downstream effects of VGCC activation, and that stands for voltage-gated calcium channels, include cataracts, detached retinas, glaucoma, and macular degeneration. And that's just about, I don't know, let's just listen to that, folks. Cataracts, detached retinas. If your retina detaches, say goodbye to the eyesight in that item. Glaucoma and macular degeneration. Moreover, the fluids in the kidneys allow regeneration of electrical fields. This impacts the glomerular filtration and reabsorption, adversely affecting two major functions of the kidneys. So basically, he's saying the influx of all these antennas will send out deeply penetrating magnetic fields that will disturb electrically charged groups that are dissolved in the aqueous phases of the body. When these charged groups are excited to action, they can regenerate electric fields that are essentially identical to the electric fields pulsed from the original EMFs. So the amplification of electrical fields across plasma membranes produces EMF effects deep within the body, because the voltage sensors in the body are sensitive to outside electric forces and will reverberate the frequency. So it's actually almost as if, the natural mechanisms in your body that are designed to regulate things and will end up amplifying the EMF effects. 5G will be the greatest assault of electric forces the body has ever had to endure. Once 5G is rolled out, the assault will be nonstop. So because Brussels, Belgium, is calling out the dangers of 5G and blocking its rollout, they are currently a world leader for protecting human health. So again, folks, this is from naturalnews.com, the article entitled Brussels Halts 5G Deployment. And the movement is growing. This is the corresponding increase in the propaganda BS factor. What we're seeing here in terms of, we've got another one to share here. This is kind of mind-blowing. Jumping down. So most of us are aware now of the coronavirus in China, which is being quarantined over there. I mean, they've got whole cities that are barricaded. They've just flown 201 Americans back from the infected city. They are being quarantined at an Air Force base in Southern California. Until their symptoms can be checked out and their exposure levels verified. So this is a big scare thing going on, right? Well, not to worry, because an article at gizchina.com, which is Chinese gadget reviews. Okay, so this is a online tech magazine for the latest developments in China. Headline from a couple days ago: Huawei which, for those of you who don't know, that's the big Chinese 5G tech firm that has caused serious concern over in the UK and with President Trump about potential intelligence community snooping that will be secretly built in to the 5G technology that the big tech company Huawei of China is rolling out. And since industry and government in China are totally hand in glove in an authoritarian government structure, the concern about Huawei 5G is that it's just a Trojan horse being rolled out across the world so that China can listen in on everybody. So, Trump has been telling Boris Johnson and the UK people, please, no Huawei, we've got to ban Huawei. Well, okay, so here's some good propaganda for Huawei about what good folks they are. Here's the headline: Huawei is helping fight coronavirus by setting up 5G base stations. Wow, what great news. So here's the news. Today, Huawei announced their support for Hubei Mobile and Hubei Unicom to launch 5G base stations in the Wuhan Vulcan Mountain Hospital. As you probably heard by now, the Wuhan Vulcan Mountain Hospital is the building China is trying to build as quickly as possible to fight against the coronavirus epidemic. The building follows the model of the Beijing Jiaodangshan Hospital, a hospital in China's capital city, built in only 7 days. Well, not to worry, because Huawei is helping fight coronavirus with IT support by building an ultra-high-speed 5G network. I mean, this is almost approaching like a Monty Python sketch here. It's like, oh, you're suffering from a skin ailment here. Just apply this acid to your skin. It takes the skin right off. No problem. You won't be worrying about your cosmetic damage. This is, they're putting in a lethal system in this new hospital for people whose immune systems are already highly compromised from the coronavirus. Here's the details. Huawei's representatives of the Hubei region urgently set up a coronavirus outbreak protection project team, providing a workforce of about 150 people. From receiving the notification from the Wuhan Epidemic Prevention and Control Emergency Center to the commissioning of 5G base stations, the entire construction from network planning, survey, design, and construction to fiber laying, erecting base stations, and commissioning was completed in just 3 days. So this ought to give us pause when we think about the heedless and largely invisible rapid rollout that is possible and that is, in fact, going on around us. They've outfitted an entire hospital with 5G base stations in just 3 days. At present, 3 major operators in Hubei have already established and opened a 5G network near the hospital. So it'll help the Vulcan Mountain Hospital achieve ultra-high-speed network connectivity, ensuring high-speed data access, data collection, remote consultation, remote monitoring, and other services. It's simply mind-blowing, knowing what we know, that this is actually being touted, this kind of propaganda about, thank God, sweet God, that these people infected with this deadly virus who are already suffering from flu and then possibly lethal pneumonia symptoms will have their bodies bombarded with ultra-high frequency millimeter wave radiation. Wow. That's, but don't forget the benefits, folks. High-speed data access, data collection, remote consultation, remote monitoring, and other services. So we will be able to report your death at an even greater speed to the world. So it's all good.
Let's just look at this for a second because,
yeah.
Let me see. What's the date on this? This was 2019, May of 2019. Okay. And the same place where this flu broke out, central China's Hubei province has built more than 300 5G base stations and achieved full 5G signal coverage in its prefecture-level cities, local telecommunications sources said. Now, what they're saying is that the exact same place where 5G has been already implemented is where this flu suddenly broke out. All right, now, I know this gets woo-woo. I mean, it's almost like, are you kidding me? But you can essentially send the energy signature of a flu to a human population, and they will get flu symptoms, even though they haven't touched the flu virus. All right, that's a fact. As a matter of fact, a few years ago, oh God, it's more than a few years ago, probably maybe 15 years ago. Would it be that much? At least 10 years ago. Down here in South Florida, all of a sudden, there was an outbreak of flu. And they hadn't perfected it, okay? So there's an outbreak of flu, but at the same time, the energy sensitive people were like, what in the hell is happening? Because they were feeling something happening to their bodies. And it didn't take me but a fraction of a second to go, flu that shouldn't be, because there's no connection to anything, and we're feeling these energies. I bet they've put the flu virus on an electromagnetic signal. And that's what I think happened. You're making noises.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
But anyway, the same, and Mark Steele pointed this out, that in the very area where the flu outbreak happened is where you got the 5G. Now, at first I was kind of ignoring this flu thing because it's always BS. But interestingly enough, the New York Post, okay, sort of semi-mainstream, came out with a scathing put down of this scare, this flu scare. And they went back into history. I wish I had it up here right now. But they went back into history about, the swine flu and this flu and that flu. And all of them were supposed to kill us all. And nothing ever happened because flu viruses will first off, Dr. McCullough, a good, I would say almost a month before the swine flu ever came out, was talking about a flu that was going to be introduced as being this pandemic thing, but that it was all genetically modified. This was a human thing. He talked about it. And then boom, it started, and he actually said they're going to do this. And by God, that's exactly, they followed the same, things, the same list that McCullough had put out before anything was even being said about it. But he had gotten my sources. I don't think he never uses that, but he had gotten a heads up from somebody, I'm sure. So when you look at the flu epidemics and just think back, oh my God, we got to go get these masks, and we got to, we can't, but did anything actually happen? No. When they go back over the history, it's like it didn't happen because viruses are not stupid. Oh, I'm surprising, huh? They're not stupid. They're not going to try to kill the host. They want to live in the host. So they actually get weaker once they're out there. They get weaker, Michael. So there is a lot. I've seen both sides of it. Oh, the deaths are being underreported. And then you've got people in many, many, many different sources saying, oh, come on, this is the same scare that they keep throwing at us. How many times are they going to, it always reminds me of the Peanuts characters, where Lucy's got the football and she always pulls it out. I mean, how many times is that little guy going to kick that football knowing that she's probably going to do that? She can't help herself.
Yeah, poor Charlie Brown. Yeah, it's Lucy's nature.
But anyway, so there's something much more to what this is, than what you're hearing from mainstream. Don't be panicked about it. It's going to go away. But the fact that it even started up is either because they did put the flu frequency into the system, or these poor people had their immune system so beat up so badly from the 5G that a simple flu took over in that one area. You see, you don't know what the people, what was the condition of the people living in 5G. They probably were sick because they didn't have any immune system. So anything would have started, not a pandemic, but would have been, everybody would have caught it because nobody had an immune system.
Well, I saw last night, I was following up on this in a German news network, covering the story of a Chinese woman who had come to a corporate meeting, I think it might have been either in Frankfurt or Dusseldorf, where she was not yet symptomatic. She was infected but didn't know it. She had come from the infected region in China to this executive meeting in Germany and interacted, shaking hands, sneezing them perhaps and, covering her mouth, whatever. And then on her flight back to China, she noticed the symptoms and then was diagnosed with coronavirus when she got back. And so she then notified, of course, her colleagues in Germany that they may have been exposed, and they had been, and one man had already come down with the symptoms. Well, of course, in a corporate environment in Germany, it's not as if she's, suddenly in a 5G free zone. I don't know if it's quite as densely layered, the densification that she's likely experiencing in China is as bad as what she experienced in Germany. But it just points up, what you're describing, that the long-term cumulative effects that 5G can have, and in all these multiple ways in terms of increased stress, headaches, anxiety, carcinogenic effects, DNA damage, sleep deprivation. That all of this, of course, is going to lower your immune resistance. Whether that plays into what might be the unique contagion factor this particular virus has, I don't know. I don't have the technical expertise or knowledge to be able to trot out anything useful on that score as to whether this kind of the coronavirus is that contagious such that it doesn't, anyway, that it doesn't matter what you're, it's difficult to exactly point out how much more vulnerable you might be to it simply because your bodily systems are highly compromised by EMF exposure. But I love some of the.
Let me I just want to read this, okay? Because it's okay. WUHAN, WUHAN, okay, is one of the first pilot cities of the 5G network in China. So far, 5G technology has been applied in various fields in the city. Now, listen to how they say this, okay? Applied to various fields in the city, including intelligent education, intelligent medical treatment, driverless cars, intelligent tourism, smart transportation, and intelligent enterprises. You lying bastards. Nothing is intelligent. They're all brain dead.
Yeah.
It's like, why would you use that? Granted, this might be a translation from China, but intelligent tourism? What is that?
Well, they're talking about, like it's smart, like your phone is smart, right?
Yeah, they're trying to, just the way that they present this information, it's like, be smart, be intelligent. Don't listen to the people that are quacks. I mean, they're from
right,
everything.
Because they must be dumb.
Yes, everything that you see in the literature. I just got a 5G flyer in the mail. A Verizon flyer. We've got 5G. We got, and it's like, oh my God, you people are just, the propaganda is so blatant. And, it goes on and on. Anyway, we can go on and on. The other thing that I really think we should look at is something, because it's the one on neurosciencenews.com, living near major roads linked to risks of dementia, Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's. Have you got that one up?
Good Lord. Yeah, what fun. Let's go on to...
Yeah, let's read that one, because that one was like, whoa.
Okay, Highway Living from Neuroscience News.
Yeah, neurosciencenews.com.
Yeah, Highway Living is the life for me. Dementia spreading out so far and wide. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm an old Broadway guy. Living near major roads linked to the risk of dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and multiple sclerosis. This is from Neuroscience News in an article from last week, January 20th, 2020. Here's a summary. Living less than 50 meters, that's half a football field, folks, more or less, away from a major road, or less than 150 meters away from a highway, increases the risk for dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and multiple sclerosis. However, living close to green spaces appears to have more of a protective effect against neurodegenerative diseases. And the source on this is the University of British Columbia. This is from an article published in the journal Environmental Health. Researchers from the University of British Columbia analyzed data for 678,000 adults in the metropolitan Vancouver area. They found that living less than 50 meters from a major road or less than 150 meters from a highway is associated with a higher risk of developing dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and multiple sclerosis, likely due to increased exposure to air pollution. They also found living green spaces like parks has protective effects against developing these neurological disorders. Now, they are linking this to air pollution. I am not seeing a specific relation, causative factor that they are making to 5G towers. However, all you need to do is drive along an interstate these days. I've driven from Madison, Wisconsin, down to Chicago, Illinois, hundreds of times. And this last time I went back there on a family visit, and it was literally every 2 or 3 miles, huge 4G towers right there. So basically interstates are lethal zones. They're toxic zones when it comes to EMF exposure. They're talking about air pollution, but within air pollution you have electromagnetic pollution. I mean, it's still airborne. But the concept here is, yes, air pollution. Think about what you're dealing with. You're dealing with these fumes always around you. Okay, so that's what they obviously looked at. But the fact of the matter is that you're absolutely correct. On a major highway, okay, you remember Janice was saying that she had her meter and it kept maxing out. And she was talking about, let's think about 95 here in this area where you've got the lanes where you can, fast lanes, those ones where you have to pay for it, but you get fewer people because they don't want to pay. Yeah. And that every so many feet, you're getting pinged because they want to know you're still on the system, right? And that's that beam that is now looking for a little thing that you've got on your windshield, right? It identifies you. It's looking for that. That's what it's looking for. But that thing bleeds out into the lanes beside it, and anybody who happens to be down there, next to the highway. So if you're near any one of these highways, you could likely be beamed, and this is a very powerful beam because it's trying to make a connection with a moving car. Okay, so people that are just in a highway, I'd like to know what the rates of their eyesight is, their dementia, down there. And the other thing is that all these new cars have all this Wi-Fi in it. And we have no clue as to what that might be doing.
So yes, I understand that this is based on the fact that they looked at air pollution, but the fact of the matter is it was the proximity to the highway, and they did not look at the EMF Wi-Fi. Again, they look at things, well, the bees are dying because of glyphosate. Well, no, not necessarily. They look at the what they think is the obvious one because they don't want to go into this really complicated, thing of EMF pollution, Wi-Fi pollution. It's just so. But the reason I wanted to point it out is that, to me, this shows two things. A lot of the data being done by concerned people is not looking at the real problem. If you're looking at the real problem, everything is going to be even worse. What we're getting are the people that have no option except to look at electromagnetic pollution. Oh my God, maybe it's electromagnetic. You think it could be? You think? Well, maybe we should look at that. Oh, that is why we have all these scientists out there now, because they hadn't been looking at it. And then they started looking at it. Now it's becoming obvious. It's the stupidest thing that human beings have ever done. And not only that, not only are we killing ourselves and killing our future with the, DNA sterilization of human beings, but you're killing the entire nature. You're killing the microorganisms in the soil. You're killing the bugs. The bugs feed the reptiles. The reptiles are dying. The birds are dying. I mean, how much of this do you really want to let continue? Because it's not going to take much more before it's going to tip over, and then you're going to be in trouble. But anyway, I got off on a tangent. Sorry, apologize.
No problem. There's something I want to share here. Let me pull this up and put it on our put it in our window here. So we also like to be, solution oriented, not just throw bad news at you. And one piece that caught my eye is, what the distortions that the people like to throw at those of us who are pointing out the dangers of 5G. Conspiracy theorists and people who've got nothing better to do than come up with controversies and nothing better to do than collect thousands of signatures and line up hundreds of protesters about something that's really non-existent hysteria. One of the things they'll throw at you is, well, you're opposing the March of Progress, you're Luddites, that phrase. It means you just want to return to, primitive forms of, horse-drawn carts and snail mail and ships carrying letters across the sea over a period of, 2 or 3 months as communication. There is the beautiful, safe alternative of fiber optic, of wired networks, which is safer and faster, right? But then there's also, when we're talking about high-tech smart cities are promising efficiency by monitoring everything from bins to bridges and, also things like diapers. So you've got Wi-Fi in your baby's diaper so that you can be signaled on your smartphone when he's wet his pants. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that is so important. That is such a benefit that's worth risking your child's becoming sterile. Yeah, he'll have his sterile little diapers there. So but let me read this from a website called getpocket.com, and the title is "The Case for Making Low-Tech Dumb Cities Instead of, quote, Smart Ones." High-tech smart cities promise efficiency by monitoring everything from bins to bridges, but what if we ditched the data and embraced ancient technology instead? This is from The Guardian by Amy Fleming. And before we get into this, I just wanted to say this article takes us down a path of saying, hey, we're not talking about completely ditching technology, but let's not lose sight of the earth-centered wisdom of practical, low-tech solutions that are, moreover, are long-lasting, durable, simple to operate. You build a huge smart city. Okay, what is the cost associated with maintaining that smartness? Let me read from this a little bit. Nancy, did you get the link there? Are you seeing this article?
Yes, and I posted it in chat.
Oh, okay, great. Ever since smartphones hooked us with their limitless possibilities and dopamine hits, mayors and city bureaucrats can't get enough of the notion of smart washing their cities. It makes them sound dynamic and attractive to business. What's not to love about whiz kids streamlining your responsibilities for running services, optimizing efficiency, and keeping citizens safe into a bunch of fun apps? Now, there's no concrete definition of a smart city, but high-tech versions promise to use cameras and sensors to monitor everyone and everything, from bins to bridges, and use the resulting data to help the city run smoothly. One high-profile proposal by Google's sister company Sidewalk Labs is to give 12 acres of Toronto a smart makeover. This is facing a massive backlash. In September, an independent report called the plans frustratingly abstract. In turn, U.S. tech investor Roger McNamee warned Google cannot be trusted with such data, calling the project, quote, surveillance capitalism. And that's a really good term to remember, surveillance capitalism, because that's really the big dynamic behind 5G. It's just a huge cash boon in terms of surveillance and data and monetizing data. There are practical considerations too, as Shoshana Sachs of the University of Toronto has highlighted. Smart cities, she wrote in the New York Times in the year 2019, quote, will be exceedingly complex to manage with all sorts of unpredictable vulnerabilities. Tech products age fast. What happens when the sensors fail? Can cities afford expensive new teams of tech staff, as well as keeping the ground workers they will still need? If smart data identifies a road that needs paving, it still needs people to show up with asphalt and a steamroller. She also pithily calls for redirecting some of our energy toward building excellent dumb cities. I love that phrase, excellent dumb cities. She's not anti-tech. It's just that she thinks smart cities may be unnecessary. For many of our challenges, she writes, we don't need new technologies or new ideas. We need the will, foresight, and courage to use the best of the old ideas. In fact, you could go further. According to this article, there's old and then there's really old. And for urban landscapes, which are increasingly vulnerable to floods, adverse weather, carbon overload, choking pollution, and an unhealthy disconnect between humans and nature, there's a strong case for looking beyond old technologies to ancient technologies. It is eminently possible to weave ancient knowledge of how to live symbiotically with nature into how we shape the cities of the future before this wisdom is lost forever. We can rewild our urban landscapes and apply low-tech ecological solutions to drainage, wastewater processing, flood survival, local agriculture, and pollution that have worked for indigenous peoples for thousands of years, with no need for electronic sensors, computer servers, extra IT support, or a Wi-Fi sensor in your baby's diapers, by the way. So Julia Watson, who's a lecturer in urban design at Harvard and Columbia Universities, recently launched her book called Low Tech, and that is spelled L-O-T-E-K, Low Tech, Design by Radical Indigenism, and that is through the Taschen publisher. It's the result of more than 20 years of traveling to research the original smart settlements through an architect's lens. Like, for example, she visited the Medan people in Iraq who weave buildings and floating islands from reeds. visited the Zuni people in New Mexico, who create waffle gardens to capture, store, and manipulate water for desert crop farming, and the Subak rice terraces of Bali. Watson walked the living tree root bridges that can withstand adverse weather better than any human-made structure, and that allow the Khasi hill tribe in northern India to travel between villages during monsoon floods. There are so many different ways you can re-wild cities, says Watson. It's not just a case of plonking an ancient system in a city, but rather adapting complex ecosystems for different types of places with their own unique requirements. Take a current proposal she's working on for the high-rise city of Shenzhen on the Pearl River estuary by Hong Kong. It was once a fishing village, then a textile town, and it just skyrocketed, says Watson. All the fish ponds and polders and dikes and wetlands that absorb all the water in that delta landscape are being erased. So the city is developing in a way that is erasing the indigenous resilience in the landscape. And, this is a word you hear all the time these days, resiliency. How can a community and its relationship to the land be resilient, be able to bounce back in a crisis, be able to manage emergencies, crises, floods, unexpected natural disasters, or even expected ones. Here in Colorado, I was involved with our local resiliency movement to examine all of the ways in which this particular community is establishing or can establish a healthy, resilient relationship and planning.
Let's just stop here because we are past the top of the hour. We'll take a break.
Oh, yeah.
I love this article. We should really give it the time that it needs to be, thought of. So let's just take a break here and we'll be back. And we are back.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Radio 5G. This is Michael Henry Dunn with my co-host Nancy Hopkins. And we are sharing with you a fascinating article entitled "The Case for Making Low-Tech Dumb Cities Instead of Smart Ones." And Nancy, did you have some comments you wanted to make as we're rolling through this article here?
No, this is the way well, I said no, and then I'm going to talk. This is the way we have to look at things. I'm loving this because it's a different way of understanding. It's not a difficult fix to make everything right. It's just not going to be very profitable for the technology companies because once you set this in action, you don't have massive amount of income needed to keep it going. It self-perpetuates itself. And the telecommunications system, the whole crazy-ass structure that they've got, is based on continually spending money so that they can make money. If their equipment wasn't going bad, you wouldn't have to replace it. And that's what keeps them in a job. So, yes, this is very, very important information.
Right, it's the old planned obsolescence thing. We don't want to make too durable a product because if it lasts too long, you won't have to buy more from us.
Exactly.
So this is quoting from an article, a book actually called Low Tech Design by Radical Indigenism from Julia Watson, who's a lecturer in urban design at Harvard and Columbia universities, and describing how the high-rise city of Shenzhen on the Pearl River estuary by Hong Kong was once a fishing village, then a textile town, then it just skyrocketed. She says all the fish ponds, polders, dikes, and wetlands that absorb all the water in that delta landscape are being erased. So the city is developing in a way that is erasing the indigenous resilience in the landscape. But she says you don't have to erase in order to go forward. So again, folks, this is not about, no, we want to go back to primitive. We want to all be living in mud huts and villages. No, there is a blend of ancient wisdom, resilient ways of working with the land that can be blended with the best of our technological wisdom. She says you can leapfrog forward and embed local intelligence using a nature-based traditional Chinese technology that's climate resilient, ecologically resilient, and culturally resilient, and we can make beautiful urban spaces with them as well. Then it goes on. This is an article from getpocket.com entitled "The Case for Making Low-Tech Dumb Cities Instead of Smart Ones." And she goes on to quote Kongjian Yu, who is a design professor at Beijing University, who agrees with this philosophy known as the sponge cities architect. Yu has created an urban landscape in China that passively absorbs rainwater using permeable pavements, green roofs, terraced wetland parks that flood during monsoon. If wetlands are situated upriver of the buildings, they will flood before the water reaches the city proper. So the parks have brought fish and birds back to cities, says Yu, and people love it. The projects are performing well. Many of them have been tested for over 10 years and can certainly be replicable in other parts of the world. In fact, this month he has visited Bangladesh, ironically helping their smart city project, where he has convinced the minister in charge that nature is smart. What a concept. Nature is smart. Our ancient wisdom tells us how to live with nature in a smart way. And in Europe, Copenhagen, too, has opted for a DUM, or as local planners call it, a green and blue solution to their increasing flood risks, namely a series of parks that can become lakes during storms. The city estimated they would cost a third less than building levees and new sewers and come with the added ecological benefits of rewilding. An abandoned military site was cleaned up in the year 2010 and rewilded into a nature reserve and common for grazing animals, the Amager Nature Center. It's a vast park with not only happy people meandering and cycling around, but insects, protected amphibians, rare birds, and even deer. So this is like just one of the best things I've heard of in a long time, because how many abandoned military sites, abandoned factory sites, unused land that before, some developer grabs it to build yet another series of high-rises, we can balance an urban landscape. And this rewilding is just a very promising thing. Reading on here.
Well, before you read on, I want to tell a story because back in 2001, the Dade County, Miami-Dade County down here in South Florida, they had on the drawing board a program to buy up local homes when they came for sale, and then taking the property and making it into little reservoirs of nature to allow exactly what they're saying, the water to go back into the aquifer where it's drinking water. And one of the properties, I was actually talking with them because we were going to take the property next to me on either side and use my property as I would donate it to the community after, I leave. But it was the idea that in this area, which always floods out, they would put in exactly what they're talking about and also be able to monitor how well it is working. Because the water on top is rainwater, but it's percolating down. What happens? Does it get through the limestone, and is it clean when it gets there? I mean, all sorts of things that you have to address with this. And then 2001 happened, and we went from a freedom-loving country into a fear state that took away any program that wasn't designed to do anything except make more money. So that ended right there when the buildings came down in New York. But this was before they were all brain dead. They could see this. But I understand that they are doing a similar, less big concept, and that was pretty small. It was only talking 3 acres, but in areas. So sometimes you're just forced into looking at these things because anything else you're trying to do is not going to work.
Yeah, I think, when I manage to stay in my hopeful place, and I think about what major cities are going to look like 30 to 50 years down the road, this is my hopeful vision of what can happen, which is that we'll be forced to adapt these because these centralized systems are very likely to be breaking down. I mean, there's so much upheaval, so many disruptive factors in the field now that it's going to come down to what ends up actually working, because the big telecom companies and all of the other financial elite corrupt factors that are trying to impose these centralized systems for their own profit on us. Eventually, this is breaking down, and people are going to go with what works and what restores some balance. And, it's not going to be easy. It'll be a bumpy ride, most likely. But this blend of really smart technology, and I think might be better, rather than say smart technology, to say wise technology. There's a difference between being smart and being wise. Reading on with this article here from getpocket.com, but dumb cities can be even smarter than that. Not only can functioning wetlands defend cities against floods and restore nature, they can clean wastewater. And they can do it more efficiently than sewage treatment works, all while absorbing a whole lot of carbon, nitrogen, sulfur, and methane, and creating a fishing industry and fertile farmland. I mean, imagine that, in the middle of Manhattan, Chicago, wherever, LA. Creating a fishing industry and fertile farmland, no water, energy, treatment, chemicals, or fish feed required. The world's largest such system is in East Calcutta in India, and it involves the city's sewage feeding the fish. Now, I don't know how many of our listeners have ever been to Calcutta. I actually have. And, in the wake of the crisis in Bangladesh in the early 70s, there was a huge influx of refugees that has never gone away, which is, millions of people in Calcutta, which obviously when you're talking about sewage problems, it's vast. It's an incredibly potentially toxic environment. So they're citing here the world's largest system in Calcutta involves the city's sewage feeding the fish. It saves the city approximately $22 million a year in running costs for a waste treatment plant. The water can be used for irrigation, saving a further 500,000 pounds, that's British pounds, in water and fertilizer costs, and it enables much of the city's food to be grown locally. Again, this is a huge issue. Locally grown food is just going to become more and more the go-to sensible solution. Or as waters rise globally, we can learn from Makoko, the incredible city on stilts in Lagos that is home to 80,000 residents. And its floating school is sustainable and solar-fueled. It's captured the world's imagination. Rotterdam, in the Netherlands, has already introduced a floating forest and farm and is developing plans for a sustainable floating city. And as for dumb transport, there can be no doubt that walking or cycling are superior to car travel over short urban distances. Zero pollution, zero carbon emissions, and free exercise. There's also a dumb solution to the spread of air conditioning. One of the greatest urban energy guzzlers is, of course, air conditioning. And the solution is more plants. A study in Madison, Wisconsin, one of my favorite towns, found that urban temperatures can be 5% cooler with 40% tree cover. Now, 5% cooler might not sound like much, But the difference between like 85 degrees and 80, particularly in a really humid summer month in southwest Wisconsin, can be really tangible. Green roofs with high vegetation density can cool buildings by up to 60%. Or you could just think like a bug. Architects are mimicking the natural cooling airflows of termite burrows. Wow. That kind of blows my mind. Mick Pierce's 350,000 square foot Eastgate Center in Zimbabwe's capital of Harare, completed in the 1990s, is still held up as a paragon of dumb air conditioning. All it needs are fans, and it uses a tenth of the energy of the buildings next door. So, to me, this is all incredibly encouraging news and represents the kind of thing that, really the big telecom companies and other big, what's the surveillance capitalism profit centers don't want us to know about. The solution is smart cities, higher tech, EMF and Wi-Fi everywhere, connectivity to your baby's diapers. I keep going to the baby's diapers thing because it's just the most absurd and is actually touted in ads. It's just kind of blowing my mind, but that's how absurd it is, folks. That this is just so much more a common sense solution. It just involves cities that are designed for optimum human health and not for optimum corporate profit. So I think it's possible to make that transition in priorities without going to the demon of socialism, Soviet style. Folks, this is just about common sense, smart solutions, intelligent, wise solutions. Going on to quote a little bit more here. A few token green walls and trees won't do it. Watson calls for a focus on permaculture, self-sustaining ecosystems. If it's an urban forest, she says, perhaps it's in the center of the city, perhaps it's on the periphery, or it could be an interior environment, an atrium, designed to have a complex ecosystem that's also agriculturally productive. I mean, just think about, all the mega shopping malls we've all been through. And they've got big atriums with sunlight filtering in. How stunning would it be to have a functioning ecosystem in those environments? There are hundreds of nature-based technologies that have never been explored. For example, Watson envisions stunning urban uses for the living root bridges of the Khasi Hill tribe. And again, these are the people in India who for thousands of years have used these living root bridges, which are durable and flexible and which survive heavy monsoon floods. So here's the usage that she's envisioning. Quote, they could be grown to reduce the urban heat island effect by increasing canopy cover along streets with roots trained into trusses that integrate with the architecture of the streets. In essence, removing the distinction between a tree and a building. And you've got to love that. Living in a treehouse with all of the upside and none of the downside. They could even retain their original use during seasonal floods, living physical bridges over the water. So I'm going to read the rest of this here. Jump in at any point, of course, Nancy, if you get inspired with some comments. In April, Greta Thunberg and Guardian columnist George Monbiot made a rallying video calling for more trees and wetlands and plant cover to tackle the climate crisis. Cities can be part of this push. So this idea of smart cities is born of what Watson describes as, quote, the same human superiority complex that thinks nature should be controlled. What's missing is symbiosis. Life on Earth is based upon symbiosis. And she suggests that we replace the saying survival of the fittest with survival of the most symbiotic. It's not as catchy, perhaps, but smarter, concludes the article. And I would add, not as catchy, but wiser. we hear that phrase, nature, evolution, it's survival of the fittest. And that's actually not what the theory of evolution demonstrates or proposes. It really is survival of the most symbiotic, survival of the most adaptable. And if you are adapting in a symbiotic relationship, which is mutually cooperative with the environment, well, guess what? Then we have a chance of surviving the sixth extinction event, which is unfolding all around us. And again, this is an article from, it was originally published in The Guardian on January 15th of this year, 2020. And again, this is titled The Case for Making Low-Tech Dumb Cities Instead of Smart Ones. And the article is by Amy Fleming. And we picked this up from Pocketworthy and have shared the link with you down at the bottom of your screen if you're watching this on our YouTube channel. And It's in this chat for those of us who are listening live.
Okay, I'm going to give you another link here because I've had this tab up for I can't even tell you how long. It's about what they've done in Russia regarding basically what we're saying here. And you got it in Skype right now, Michael?
Yeah, I've got it. Looking at it right here.
Okay. I just think that this is fascinating because, and I put it in chat right now, and of course now I've gone and lost the dang thing. Okay, here we go. 40%. You want to read this one? Because I think it's fascinating. 40% of Russia's food is coming from their dacha gardens. It's what the GMO mega crops don't want you to know. You want to take a read of that?
Sure, yeah. And I'm also going to make sure I'm pronouncing. I've looked at that word for a couple of decades now.
I'm not sure.
Dacha, it's dacha. I'm going to look up the correct Russian pronunciation. I admit that the only Russian phrase I know that can actually pronounce correctly is welcome, which is dobro pozhalovat v Colorado or v Chicago or whatever. So dachas are it's a tradition in Russia. It's your, rural cottage getaway. And back in the Soviet days, the elite, had very high-end rural cottage getaways, and the rest of the people were, grateful if they could get a little hut somewhere. So let me read this. This is from offgrid.info, and 40% of Russia's food is from dacha gardens. This is what the GMO megacorps don't want you to know. While most people in the Western world are completely reliant on large corporate agribusiness enterprises, many Russians feed themselves by growing vegetables and fruits in dacha gardens, which supply an astonishing 40% of the country's food. Russia is an industrialized country that's larger than the U.S., but grows about half of its total food production in home gardens in a difficult and short season climate. So remember, we're not talking about like the breadbasket regions of California or the Midwest here. We're talking Russia. These dacha gardens are proof of the viability of small-scale sustainable agriculture as a genuine alternative to the highly criticized industrial farming model. Dacha gardening has been feeding the people of Russia for a millennium. It started as mainly subsistence or survival gardening and has evolved into a self-provisioning model between the Bolshevik Revolution, which was in 1917, and World War II. 1/3 of the Russian population owns a dacha. There are about 1 million dachas in the Moscow region alone. A typical dacha has a garden plot with a cabin. With a size of 600 square meters or 0.15 acres, dachas were originally intended as recreation getaways for city dwellers and as small gardens for food. Some dacha plots are over 1,200 to 1,500 square meters, but no property exceeds 2.4 acres or almost 1 hectare. So growing your own food supplies is a habit that has fed the Russian nation for centuries. Russians pride themselves on the desire to grow their own food. This passion has contributed immensely to the sustainability of Russian agriculture. And I remember back in the 1980s, this is me digressing from the article for a minute here, when I just suddenly started to want to read a lot about Russia and Russian history and Russian culture. And this was just as Mikhail Gorbachev had come to power in the Soviet era. And this was the era of glasnost and perestroika, which were the Russian words for openness and restructuring. You know, this was also in the wake of Chernobyl, where, you know, the radiation spillage was such that the Soviet Union had to open up about what was really going down. And so I began to read about how even, you know, in the midst of the failure of the central planning of the communist era, where, you know, there'd be these central plans, 5-year plans, you know, brought down from the Politburo about everything was supposed to work. And of course it didn't work, and it was chaos. But the Russian people, you know, were incredibly creative about how to deal with this. It's what has made them instinctively to some of the shrewdest traders in the world, traders, traders in the world, because they'd go out shopping and they'd have what was called a perhaps bag. You always carried your perhaps bag with you, because if there was something in the stores, you bought it no matter what it was, whether you needed it or not, because you could trade it for something that you did need, or you knew something that your neighbor might need from his uncle, and you'd end up with something. But miraculously, you know, because they're very hospitable, and if you came to visit a Russian home and a Russian family, even in the midst of all this supposed, you know, deprivation in the central planned shops, out from nowhere would emerge fresh vegetables, food, you know, a generously provided meal. And not like, you know, they're hugely wealthy, but they just were able to take care of themselves largely because of this, you know, tradition of growing their own foods in these dacha plots.
Well, let me just point out that, because I don't see it being covered in the article, but during the absolute, let's say, best working Soviet era, the vast majority, like 80% of the food that was being produced was not being produced on the communal farms, because they had, like in alleys and cities, they had gardens. They had along the train track, they would put in gardens. It was astounding. Like 80% of all the potatoes that were grown under the Soviet rule with their communal gardens, 80% of it was grown in private gardens. So this was something that had been developed over centuries, really.
Right. And the central planners didn't like it because it basically, you know, went back to something that smelled too much like private ownership and free enterprise. But they had to accommodate it, because otherwise the alternative was starvation. So going ahead with this article here, despite the mass urbanization and industrialization of the past century, many Russians still migrate to their rural kitchen gardens to grow and harvest fruits and vegetables. The most common dacha fruits and vegetables in cool, temperate regions of Russia include apples, blackcurrant, gooseberry, strawberry, plum, pear, grape, potato, cucumber, zucchini, pumpkin, tomato, carrot, cauliflower, radish, turnip, onion, garlic, and parsley. I'm surprised we're not seeing beets in here, which are a staple of Russia. But anyway, according to 2011 data from the Russian Statistics Service, dacha gardens produce over 80% of the country's fruits and berries, over 66% of the vegetables, and almost 80% of the potatoes. Dacha communities also supplied 50% of the nation's milk. Much of it consumed raw. And these figures could be higher as they don't take into account the self-provisioning efforts of wild harvesting or foraging of wild-growing plants, berries, nuts, and mushrooms. Dacha gardening, or self-provisioning gardening, played an important role in the early 1990s after the collapse of the Soviet bloc. When the heavily subsidized commercial agriculture collapsed with the demise of the Soviet Union, Dacha gardens survived and were the main reason why the Russian people did not experience a famine during the period. To put this in modern parlance, the distributed architecture of their farming system made it robust. Key to the success of the Russian mindset is the sharing of surplus food. Dacha communities would share their excess food out of a sense of abundance or plenty. The system of sharing resulted in a resilient food network that is sustainable. And I love this because, to me, I'm from Middle America. I'm from Chicago. It was back in the day when I identified politically. I was a centrist Democrat. I don't go with either party label at this point. But instinctively free enterprise, instinctively what you call Middle America, moral values. Don't want too much government interference. Don't want it to be, completely hands-off rampant capitalist abuse. Let's find a nice, middle ground here. What actually, I think is probably the majority, if you get between the radical right and the radical left, what still in my mind are core American values, that this is what happens when people are allowed to pursue their own benefit and to have a free enterprise essentially is what this is. You're allowed to grow your own food. And look, I have more food than my family and I can consume. Well, I'm not going to necessarily go into setting up a little food market thing, make some money. Maybe I will. But what they're doing in Russia is what, sustainable communities have done all over the world for millenniums, which is the benefit of the community. You have a food bank. Like, well, we've got excess food. Let's not let it rot and go to waste. We'll have it in the food bank so that other people who don't have food can have access to it, just the benefit of the community. I mean, here in southern Colorado, the community I'm in has a very well-stocked food bank that, you can, if you happen to be in a really bad situation, with your income or whatever, we're not going to have people starving and, dropping dead by the side of the road because people share from their excess. There's a lot of greenhouses here, which in this climate, is our version of a Dacha garden up here at 8,000 feet. And this is what, I see happening. This isn't socialism, folks. This is just the natural human instinct to have a sustainable community that is going to help each other. It's not anybody telling you what to do, what you can do, what you can't do. This is just about the natural human instinct to take care of each other within the context of free enterprise and the ability to have a Dacha garden. So anyway,
let me add this. Let me add another story. This happened. I read about this years ago, and it was this little town in Britain, and the women that normally would go out and have all these flower gardens decided that maybe this was not the best thing to be doing, and maybe they should be putting in gardens for food. And that's what they did. They started, making gardens that had food in it instead of the flowers. And they said that the biggest problem they had was getting their neighbors to feel free to pick the food.
Wow.
And so the whole town got into it. I mean, people's front yard were gardens, and if you needed something for your family, you just go in and get those green beans fresh off of the. And we know that food grown if you can buy local food, it's better for your body because it's energetically of a more familiar feeling to it. It's better for your body to be eating locally grown food. So, this is a win-win, no matter how you look at it. And the only people that are going to tell you differently are the people that want to control you.
Yeah, exactly. It's, the fear thing. And you read an article like this and you get into the hope thing, which, I'm sorry, in the end, even as grim as things are, it's going to be, let's just pretend for a minute, I will, theoretically, hypothetically adopt the notion that we're all going to heck in a handbasket and there's no way out, right? Well, I intend to have a lot more fun on the way to heck in a handbasket by being hopeful, by being action-oriented, by, caring about my country and my neighbors and doing everything I can to turn the tide. Nothing is guaranteed. We're all going to die sooner or later. That's just life. But on the way there, it's just a whole lot more enjoyable, inspiring, hopeful to do everything we can to be of service, and to come up with creative solutions to what, seem like these insurmountable problems. So whenever we're tempted to despair, and believe me, with all the information that we see here on Radio 5G, there's plenty of information that if you just take it in without moving into a hopeful zone, it'll just convince you it's just over, get your little house down somewhere affordable in South America and just let the rest of the world, go to hell. That's not what I'm doing. That's not what we're encouraging our listeners to do. We can wake up. We can help awaken other people to what's happening. We can take positive action. We can use like Roy Broomhall's strategy to prevent and take down 5G towers. And then on the solution-oriented side, we can do stuff like this, local gardening. I think this is a really hopeful article. Again, this is from off-grid.info, off-grid.info. Inside real Russian dachas, this is 40% of Russia's food grown from their rural retreat gardens. And it's great stuff. And Nancy's given us another article here. Okay. This is tell us about this one, Nancy, if you would.
Sorry, it was muted. Okay, one of the things that has come out is the damage being done by the blue light LED. This is one of the things that you can actually just listen to me and you'll make a difference in your life. The red LED is virtually non-harmful to your eyesight. You can go to your television and you can set the color setting to red versus blue. And when you do, as I did, you're going to go like, oh, wow, I kind of like the blue better. It seems crisper, it seems sharper, whatever. But my eyes are, more important than my liking it, So I changed it to red. Well, now I can't. I don't even think about it being not the perfect thing. It's but it's red, so you can look at your television and not be getting your eyes burnt out. Okay, and it's just a setting in the television. Every television is going to have it slightly different, but there is a color setting, and go to the far red. Because that way your eyes are going to be protected. Not only that, but your computer has a setting, a color setting. And I reset and again, I'm not going to try to step you through it. Go to the color setting for your monitor. And you can dumb down into the red that will be so much better for your eyes. So you can absolutely do this, as soon as you stop listening to the show. But the article here is from a company that is actually making glasses to protect your eyes from the LED blue light. And I wanted to have you read this because I think it's such a great introduction to this concept that light can hurt me, can kill me. Okay, so if you don't mind, I'd really like you
to here we
go.
Okay, this is from raoptics.com. and we have the link posted for you here. Here's the story. My name is Matt Maruka, he says. As a young kid, I struggled constantly with debilitating headaches, allergies, and gut issues. I spent years trying to mask these symptoms with Western medical drugs, Eastern diets, and herbs, modern diets, and supplements, all to no avail. Then, 4 years ago, I learned about mitochondria, the little engines in our cells that keep us alive by burning our food with oxygen to make water and energy. I learned that when we are young, our mitochondria work very well, and they slowly lose their efficiency as we age. I learned that health is a synonym for how well our mitochondria work, because when we can make energy well, and maybe a better way of phrasing that, when we are able to be very efficient about making energy, we feel energized and our body can do everything it needs. I learned that all modern chronic diseases, including cancer, Alzheimer's, obesity, diabetes, autism, autoimmune diseases, and even depression are mitochondrial diseases, meaning that certain tissues' mitochondria are severely damaged in those diseases and that my issues were mitochondrial too. I learned that mitochondria are electromagnetic in nature, meaning that how they process our food and make energy is controlled by light. This explained why diet alone was not enough to actually cure my symptoms. It further clarified to me how so many people struggle with diet and exercise as their only strategies for health, and why focusing on diet, exercise, and supplements alone to improve health is like focusing only on the gas when trying to fix a car with a broken engine. The most important time for mitochondrial function is sleep. I learned that every night a hormone called melatonin helps to repair our mitochondria, and that my late-night TV, phone, and computer use was destroying my melatonin level and mitochondria because light frequencies in those devices mimic the sun and trick the brain into thinking that it's daytime. Wow. Well, I'm so guilty of this. My brain just tends to keep running, and I'm trying to go to sleep, and I think, I'll just look at my Google feed for a little bit. Oh, look, this Google feed story, based on my watching habits, is leading to this YouTube video. Okay, right. Before you know it, I'm watching the YouTube video, then I'm YouTube surfing, and I have the light of either my smartphone or my laptop, all of which, of course, are connected to Wi-Fi. But not to worry, because I've got Shungite stickers on my cell phone and laptop. But before you know it, I got all this light in these devices tricking my brain into thinking that it's daytime and ruining the mitochondrial function time of sleep, ruining the ability of melatonin to repair mitochondria. Going on with this excellent article here. From Matt Maruka, I learned that more energetic light frequencies, especially blue light, exert the strongest effect on our body clock, and the less energetic frequencies, such as red light, have a comparatively minimal effect. I learned that getting UV light from the sun through our eyes is critical to creating melatonin before it can even be secreted in the hours after the sun sets. So I began going outside in sunlight during the day to make melatonin, and wearing blue light blocking safety goggles at night to allow my melatonin to be secreted. Wow, that's a strategy I hadn't heard of. But the goggles weren't stylish. I never felt comfortable wearing them in public or to parties. I can understand that. Rather than a conversation starter, they were a conversation killer. Yeah, I can imagine that. It's like, let's avoid the weirdo in the corner wearing the goggles. If you start talking to that guy, he's going to be all over melatonin and incredibly boring. Anyway, that's me, not the article. One company tried to make true blue blocking glasses stylish, but they felt low quality and still looked really unattractive. So I decided to make my own. I started by turning people's existing glasses into blue blockers, and when demand exploded, I launched our own line, RA Optics, Raw Optics. Okay. It's actually called Raw Optics, named for the Egyptian god of the sun, of natural light, medicine, and health. Ra Ra for Ra is all I've got to say about it. We offer high quality, attractive frame styles. Okay, now this is turning into an ad. But anyway, combined with gold standard of blue light blocking technology, our lenses are made by the world's top quality lens manufacturer and are fused with pigments specifically designed to absorb all harmful blue light frequencies while providing superior optics. Goes on to say, by choosing Raw Optics, you are not only purchasing the world's finest blue blockers, you're investing in a mission to change the world by teaching people what health really means and how to build it. Our health may be created by the light from outside, but it all begins with the light from within. May your light be warm, says Matt Maruca, founder and CEO of Raw Optics. So anyway, yeah, it ends up being an ad, but
well, yes, it is. It is an ad, but the thing of it is that when Mark started talking, because you know Mark has always got those glasses on. Well, it's a blue blocker, and you know I tried to get him to tell me which ones, because people were asking what ones should, because there's so many out there you don't know, and
right.
So I can't attest to the fact that this guy is telling you the truth. He's resonating with me as being true, and his discussion in this particular, you know, his story here, rings true. They are pricey, but hey, look it, they're not as pricey as losing your sight. So at least take a look at them. But like I say, you can do the two things I just told you about. Get the television down into the red, get your computers into the red, and at least you have done that. And every computer, I think even the phones may have some ability to do that. I just don't use the phone enough to worry about it.
All right. Well, yeah, this is making me want to immediately go to my. I hardly watch TV at all these days. I just use my my laptop, so I'm going to change that color frequency from blue to red. That's definitely a must do ASAP.
And I'm sure you can go to Google and, you know, ask to be shown that on a YouTube, how to go through the process. It's very simple. But, you know, Windows, I'm talking Windows, you know, it can get confusing even if it's simple because they make it that way. So, but, you know, take a look. I mean, it's a nothing thing to do, and to do it to every computer, all your family, everybody. You know, get yourself at least in the best situation you can get without any money going out of your pocket.
Yeah, that's feels like a no-brainer to me. A no-brainer to avoid having no brain would be a little mnemonic device to remember that, and of course, having a shungite on your laptop and on your TV and on your cell phones, creating a shungite environment is so important, so that, you know, those of us who are in this movement can be operating at optimum of health and of mental, you know, presence of mind, because it's a real issue. It's a genuine concern. The dumbing down, the cumulative dumbing down that is taking place with the densification of EMF and Wi-Fi, and of course the lethal effects of 5G. You know, we need to be smart enough, resilient enough, present enough, healthy enough to not only just to live for the sake of, you know, something like a joyful life, but, you know, if you feel that it is part of your life's purpose to help wake people up to what's happening, then we're so much better able to do that, to help everybody else understand what's going on, if we're taking these steps to create the maximum optimally healthy environment that's, you know, protecting us as best we can from the lethal effects coming at us. And, some of it we're not going to be able to protect ourselves from. In your work environment, if you're at an airport, if you're in a school, you're getting bombarded with 5G. But I love what Nancy said about how if you take all these steps and if you attune with conscious intention to the Shungite field, you can essentially become what Nancy calls a Shungite being. And this isn't some, wacky, woo-woo, out there, tin hat wearing, what's the word? I'll think of it later, but the cure-all. This is just a reality having to do with the nature of the fullerene molecule and the evidence that the Shungite field actually is adaptable, works with conscious intention, the link to the quantum field. It's highly advanced science, folks, and if we take these steps, we can really optimize that. And Nancy, do you want to comment on that at all in terms of your experience of what creates that field of being a Shungite being?
Well, the idea behind Shungite is that it was gifted to us from the cosmic environment, in that it came in as a meteorite and it's got the C60 in a carbon stew, I call it. It's a carbon, most of it's carbon, but there's other things in it, so it's a composite. It's a carbon composite. That is such a frequency generator of just quantum energy because it connects to the quantum field. And the quantum field is what everything in the 3D is created from. Ever has been, ever will be. It's just the fundamentals of quantum physics. So if you're thinking in terms of proto-energy and Shungite is like opening up the door to as much proto-energy as you can use. So if you don't think about anything except maybe the basics of life, well, you're going to get the basics of life. But if you focus in on the field of Shungite, connecting with the quantum field, you have proto-energy in order to manifest within this 3D. This is quantum physics. This is not metaphysics. This is not woo-woo stuff. All right, this is basic quantum physics. That the human mind, you listen to the most famous quantum physics out there and they'll all tell you, thought manifests. You can't have a 3D environment without a conscious thought. Not possible. And Shungite just allows that to happen. Now, so they gave us this incredible gift of being able to essentially accelerate our own development in our, what do they call it? The ascension process. I don't really agree with that terminology, but
right, I know what you mean.
With that concept of evolving and as spiritual beings, not de-evolving as physical beings. Okay, that's your technology, that's your 5G, and there is many explanations as to why it's being allowed. But the bottom line is the people that are behind this, that have been planning this for a very long time, have known about this since the 70s. Those are the people that are trying to control.
You cut out there, Nancy. I'm not hearing you.
You're not hearing me? Okay, I think I'm still up. We've been disconnected from the internet. It's down. My internet is down, is what the problem is. So I'm just recording this. I'm going to hang up and hopefully figure out a way of getting people to understand what's happened. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening. May it be.
Let it be.